Hello guys, Assalamu alaikum. Oh, he's here already. Hello there.
Hello.
How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. See if I can get my camera looking at me rather than the top of my head. There we are.
There we go. How are you doing today, Hamish?
I am doing really good, thank you. Yeah. Been looking forward to chat with you for the last few days, so we finally made it.
Yes, we did. Hamish, before we dive in, how many years, man, we've been doing this?
Since I had a bit more hair on top of my head anyway. Five or 6 years I've known you. Yeah, long
Yes.
time.
Yeah, 5 years. Yeah, long time. We've done so many live streams. We've seen so many growths that we've been through for each other, my friend.
Yeah.
It's been a journey.
It has. It has been a remarkable journey. It's been a lot of fun, and then behind the scenes we've had some amazing conversations about all sorts of things that which would intrigue a lot of people. So it's quite nice that we're actually getting to share one or two new things today as well.
Yes, yes. So, Hamish, before we dive in, the same thing, a little introduction about yourself for the audience.
Okay, where do I start? Um, so yeah, I'm Hamish. I grew up in the UK, and in 2006 I moved to South Africa, and had an amazing life over there. But for all sorts of reasons, alcohol crept up into my life, and I came to a point where I was purely acting in survival, and it was basically very dangerous, and it got to a stage where if I didn't make a choice, I would end up killing myself. So I decided to sober up. I asked someone for help, and he said, yeah, let's go and find you a rehab. And that is when I stopped surviving. I started looking after myself. I started changing. I'm 6 years sober. And thank you. Yeah. And then since then, I've been on a journey of understanding who I am, what I want, what's important, all my unhealthy coping mechanisms, my stories. Are they true? Are they not? And um, yeah, I'm a happy bunny now. I don't have a problem with alcohol. And if something's uncomfortable, I'm getting better at spotting it and dealing with it. So that is me, and I'm back in the UK and living a remarkable life, looking after elderly people in the last years, some of the months of their lives.
Wow, Hamish, so proud of you, my friend. Hamish, I just want to go a little bit back where you said that I was surviving, right? I want you to shed some light on that. What do you mean when you say I was just surviving then?
I think everyone has not just the right, it's their birthright to thrive, to flourish, to live authentically, to be their true selves. And for whatever reason, growing up, we learn to deal with adult. And that's traumatic. And until we deal with those things, we often survive. I'm a trauma survivor. I'm a rape victim. I'm a rape survivor. I'm an alcohol survivor. I'm a drug survivor. All these kind of things. Yeah, great. That is super start. You are already on that journey of realizing that there's more to life than just thrive than surviving. But I think probably about 90% of the population just stay in that survival mode because it's familiar. We're comfortable in that discomfort of knowing how to deal with things because we've grown up with it. So we survive.
Hamish, don't you think it's a lot of, like, I mean, you just said it as well, it's a lot of cultural conditioning as well. And then on top of that, the added trauma that kind of chips away that sense of thriving for us.
Yeah, some people say it's about 95%. social conditioning and ancestral upbringing and conformity and that desire to fit in and be a part of and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's what we get brought up. We get brought up by our grandparents' values that our parents have passed down to us,
Mm.
that, follow the line back.
Yeah, yeah.
Depending on what your culture is, it's Christian or Islam or Hindu or whatever, or atheist, you are all following back what your parents taught you, what your grandparents taught them,
Mm.
your caregivers, and society. Need to be a good boy, need to be a good girl. Girls should be seen and not heard. It's okay for boys to do this to girls because it means they like them. All that
Yeah,
bullshit, all that
yeah.
conditioning, and we go along with it because we don't realize that it's not our own personal truth, and that's fair enough.
Yeah.
And one day something will happen where you have to go, don't want this anymore, don't like it, it's not me. Hamish was drinking, Hamish was numbing, Hamish was doing all these things because my conditioning, my growing up, my belief structures were not authentic to me, they were other people's, and so I was fighting and I didn't know how to deal with it, so I just coped with it best I could, which was hide from it, which is surviving.
And when you're saying that it's all so intense and everything, and I'm just kind of like, for the viewers kind of like bridge that gap in the understanding of how, like for me and you, we know we hit rock bottom, right? And that's where we realize that this is not what we can do. We can't live like that, right? Something is wrong here. But do you think for all of us or a lot of us to have that awakening, we have to hit rock bottom and then have that sense of awareness that I don't want to survive anymore and want to thrive?
I think we all get to a rock bottom. A rock bottom might be for somebody that sudden awareness that they are unhappy in a relationship, or that their job is really dead end and it's boring and they don't like it. So I don't think a rock bottom has to be drugs and alcohol and
Drastic, right? Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
doesn't have
Okay.
to, and an awakening can also be a hallelujah moment. It can also be divine intervention. It could be a conversation with someone where you suddenly realize, I love what that person is saying. It is talking to my heart. It is talking to my soul. I want to embrace what that person represents. So it is not always an existential crisis, a rock bottom of, two choices.
Right.
Um, it could be something incredibly beautiful. And in hindsight, rehab was incredibly beautiful because I dared to make changes. I think that's what it is when you dare to make those changes for yourself. You put yourself first. That becomes really beautiful, and that becomes, I can do it. I can actually look after myself a bit. So you've had that awakening from the drudgery and mundanity of there is something more, and I want it. And when you want it from your heart, you really want it, and you don't
Yeah.
want it tomorrow. You want it right flipping now. So yeah,
Yeah.
awakening, dark night of the soul, existential crisis, hallelujah moment, you name it. It is. I think it's when you have had enough and you want to change. Something says change,
Change,
and
yeah.
then
Or something's wrong. I need to, yeah, yeah, that makes
yeah.
sense. So,
Mm.
so Hamish, now bridging that gap and coming to, okay, I've had the awakening, right? Now I want to change. So we've got that now. What's the next? I know you said coping mechanisms and some of those things. Let's dive into those.
Yeah, cool. Um, I don't think an awakening is. It's not click bang. I'm healed. Hallelujah. It is. It
Yeah.
is. It is getting dirty. It is getting dirty and realizing you have the capacity to be different. Let's take things like people pleasing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
People do that to feel love, to get validation, to be appreciated, to be seen, things like that. Or perfectionism, I have to do it perfectly, otherwise I won't do it at all, so I end up not doing it. Or hypervigilance, dad was an alcoholic, dad was brutal, he used to hit mum, he used to hit my brother. And
Mm.
this is a story, this is not my story. And so, the child then gets aware and knows if dad comes in and he's staggering, I have to manage, I have to step between me and mum, I have to do this. That's hypervigilance. Those are not necessarily unhealthy traits. People say they are, they're not. What
Okay.
is the essence of, question for you, what is the essence of people pleasing? What are you doing?
Mm.
You're
Yes.
looking after people, you're loving them, you're caring for them. The
Mm.
codependence bit is when you're doing it wanting something back. You're wanting their love, their validation. If you love and care for someone like you do for your child or your parents, if you've got that relationship, or for friends, that's really healthy. So that codependency is, there's two sides to it. There's two sides to hypervigilance. You could be, I'm hypervigilant. It means I'm really, really good at reading the situation, and I can see when someone is potentially acting dangerous or when that's going to happen. So I can use that skill I developed as a child to keep me alive to help me thrive.
Right.
Same thing with perfectionism. Same thing with procrastination. My procrastination is my being doesn't want to do that. It's boring. It wants to do something authentic. So I think procrastination is a part of awakening. It's that, you know, I don't want to do that. My whole body doesn't want to do that. It's um, not what's aligned to my purpose and values anymore. It might have been yesterday, but today it's not. So I think all these unhealthy coping mechanisms, which include alcohol, drugs, sex, gambling, you name it, all these kind of eating, not eating, they're all methods to control the environment, control your parents, your family, your caregivers, that kind of thing. That's when we develop them. But now they're out of date. In that format, in that survival trait, they're out of date. I can take that
Mm.
care, that codependence. I'm a bloody good carer for elderly. The other week I had to call 999 because this lady had collapsed and she had a seizure in my arms. I didn't panic. I coped, I managed and did everything and got it sorted, and she's coming back from hospital. Quick
Mm.
thinking because of how I react.
Right.
Um, those skills aren't inherently wrong. I used them wrong growing up, and now I'm turning around to use them for helping other people, for service. I'm not doing them to get something back off you. I'm not being nice to you because I want you to like me, or in the hope that you might go to bed with me, or something stupid like that. I'm being nice to somebody because that's who I am.
That's so
So
interesting. So beautifully said.
all
And
those,
nobody, I think nobody has ever, sorry, I'm cutting you, but
that's right.
nobody's said it like that because, and we've done live streams before, as I mean, we've talked about these
Mm,
issues about people pleasing, for instance. Remember, we talked about narcissism and all that before. And people pleasing has always been considered something so bad and unhealthy. And even on social media, we've seen that. And now, how you kind of like giving it a new flavor is like, no, you can be doing the people pleasing, but
mm,
it's how your perception is around it, right? I'm people pleasing this person because I want them to accept me or choose me or love me, ABC. That is something different. Or there's just, I'm just doing it because this is who I am,
mm. Yeah,
right? And there's no expectation, there's no need. This is just who I am.
yeah.
And that kind of like really shifts the whole way we look at people pleasing because it's just been one dynamic that, at least for me, I can say that's all that I've learned, that don't do people pleasing.
Mm,
It's bad. And I know if you're self sabotaging yourself in the process, obviously that's a totally different thing. But where you're saying, okay, this is who I am, I like to help the elderly, and this is where I pour, and it gives me a sense of being and thriving and all that, then that's all right. It's
mm.
healthy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Mm. Yeah, and I think you've nailed it there. That's you become aware of why you're doing it,
Yeah.
and part of my process has been to realize that yes, I people please. Yes, I'm hypervigilant. Yes, I am a perfectionist. Yes, I procrastinate, and bloody hell do I procrastinate. However, all of those, just those four things kept me alive. And rather than going, you bloody idiot, you procrastinate, you do this, rather than shaming myself, part of the part of the process that I've used for a long time now is looking at these things and going, yeah, that kept me alive. I was able to do that, and it stopped me getting, not my story, hit, beaten, walked over, that kind of thing. I found ways to help me make sense of adult life as a child. Um, and I need to, if I can honor them rather than going, that was stupid, if I can honor them and just saying, thank you, Hamish, age 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you're a fucking hero. You saved my life. You helped me make sense of being a child in an adult world. I am not shaming myself. I am congratulating myself for being a hero. I've changed that whole energy around that shamed thing that I used to do, that survival mechanism. And by not shaming myself, I'm not letting myself down. I'm not beating myself up. I'm not sabotaging. I'm reprogramming my head, my whole body. My whole body, every time I do that, my body goes, thank you, Hamish. I go, sorry, I have been so slow. But it's
Yeah.
it's it's just an awareness. It's like a 2-year-old becoming 3, becoming 4, going from crawling to walking to running. You don't tick a 2-year-old off saying, come on, you should be running by now, you idiot. You encourage it. And it's exactly the same. I've had to look back and go, you know, when I was 7, I was a hero for doing that. Last year when I was doing this and that, which I don't do now, that was the best I could. I didn't know better. I now have more awareness. I'm a year older, I'm a year wiser. Why shame myself for what I didn't know? You can't. If you've got any
Yeah.
self-respect, you can't shame yourself for your past, and you have to grow that self-respect. You have to start loving yourself. You have to start forgiving yourself for beating yourself up. So it's a beautifully simple, kind, compassionate, non-masculine process. It's tapping into the feminine that we all have, and it's really powerful. And it doesn't make you a walkover. Quite the opposite. It makes you grounded and a badass because you don't take shit from no one, and you realize that you are awesome. And all those unhealthy coping mechanisms are actually really powerful, and they'll help you thrive and flourish. So it's magical.
Hamish, I'm learning so much while you're saying all that. And I really want to touch in the feminine part. But before we do that, uh, what I'm understanding, I just want to like go over it with you, is that we tell ourselves these stories, right? And when we are in survival mode, it's always about putting ourselves down, being more critical towards ourselves. What you're saying is that once we flip from that narrative, we change the story. And then when we go back to our past, the same story, we don't shame ourselves. We kind of like say, okay, this is what I knew best when I was 7. So well done, Mavish.
Yeah.
You did your best, and at 13 or at 15 or whatever, and then kind of like changing, instead of shaming ourselves, oh, you were so stupid, you didn't know anything better, or blah blah blah, you kind of like saying, shift the story, and kind of like holding that self-compassion and saying like, it's okay, you did your best at that time, and you need to stop shaming yourself for the choices you've made.
Yep.
Is that correct?
100% correct. And yet society shames us. Often family shame us. From best intentions, they shame us.
Yeah.
We shame ourselves. Friends do it. You in the school grounds, playgrounds, you see it on social media. You just see people shaming each other the whole time, and it's so destructive. It really, really
Mm,
is. And yet, when you realize that you were doing the best that you could at that time, with skills, with the energy, with the resources, with your knowledge and comprehension, that's good enough.
mhm,
Um, and why? and then, or are you, what's the right word? Are you just letting yourself off the hook? Yes, I absolutely am. I can't change the past. I can't change the fact that I was XYZ,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to
Mm.
repeat that pattern of behavior. I don't need to. Um, yes, it's a get out of jail card free if you want. Doesn't matter. You're changing your behavior. You're new, more awareness, and that's good enough. We're human. We're here to not to beat ourselves up. We're here to love and live and experience. So yeah, change. You're allowed to. You are allowed
And
to change.
would you agree with me when I say that the more we kind of accept our behavior, the more chances are we would change that behavior. But the more we shame ourselves for our behavior, the more stuck we stay in that loop.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally, totally. And it's horrible. It's horrible to look back and go, wow, I was horrible. I treated her really badly. I just used him for sex. I just used her for that. I just used her to get money off so I could do this. It's really unpleasant to look back at those grubbier aspects of your life and then not shame yourself because I've got more awareness. When I look back at some of the things I did when I was driving drunk and throwing bottles out of the window, I could go, that was so irresponsible. That was stupid. That was, yeah, it was. It absolutely was. Do you know why I threw the bottles out the window? I didn't want my wife to see them when I got home. I was more
Mm.
frightened of her reaction than throwing them out the window. That was my
You did the
experience.
best. You
That
did the
was
best.
my behavior. And it wasn't
Yeah.
okay, but I don't do it now. And I've forgiven myself for that because I couldn't do better because I was so ashamed. And it was a mess. Um, so look back, apologize to yourself. Yes, it is uncomfortable. It is very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Um, but you've got two choices: change or not. So it's that simple. You don't have to do this. You really don't have to. But you're not going to thrive if you're going to hide behind all that stuff. You'll just go back to whatever your unhealthy coping mechanism is.
Fascinating. Hamish, you also spoke about getting in touch with your feminine side. I really want you to talk about that because when you were saying that, I was just thinking, and I know that you would agree, coming from patriarchal culture and all that, how is that going to play out for men?
Um, I'm I'm going to give a nod out to one of the people listening on there. You've got Julia McLean listening at the moment, and her and I have had some incredible conversations about this. In fact, we did a podcast, and it was absolutely incredible about that dynamic. But back to your question, um, the we all have masculine and feminine traits in ourselves.
True.
Ironically, and this is going to upset people, feminism is often patriarchal. It is so toxically masculine. It is so aggressive, and it is not. Feminism is not. I'm blanketing this a little bit. A lot of
Okay.
feminism is incredibly important. A lot of it is very toxic to
Okay.
men, to women. It's unabling. It's all sorts of things. But this is why women and men have masculine and feminine tendencies,
Okay.
energies, and the feminine energy is. Good job, Juliana will pop in if I say anything wrong here. No pressure. The 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 divine feminine is creative, unstructured,
Okay.
nurturing. It
Right.
is flow. It is
Right.
beautiful, not beauty, beautiful.
Mm.
It is all about creating with wild abandon and all that kind of stuff. Whereas divine masculine is supportive and
Mm.
structure. And for the divine masculine to see the divine feminine, for those two to dance together, he, the divine masculine, will hold a structure, a form for the divine feminine to create. So you've got those two
Yin
energies.
and
One
yang, right? The yin,
that's
the yang.
exactly that's another version of it, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's the divine energy, divine creativity comes from, if it's too unstructured, it's chaotic, which isn't a bad thing. But the feminine strengths a man has is that love and compassion he has for his children, for his wife, for his family, where it
Mm.
is. I mean, you've seen this. You see, when a man's holding a child and there is just that love,
Yeah,
and he would kill for that child.
yeah,
Um, the women have got it as well. We're not. It's not about comparing. It's
yeah,
nothing like
yeah,
that. But it's
yeah.
it's it's that. It is compassion. It's being able to not to resort to the overly masculine, which is aggressive, assertive, putting down, all those kind of things. It's using those, but with wisdom, with compassion, understanding when somebody needs a hug and when they actually need, come on, pull yourself out. You're strong enough to do this, holding space for them. So, I mean, it's
Mm,
a really big topic, um,
mm,
but it's it's when you're in balance. It's when you're not too aggressive, you're not too walked over. So there's almost we're going to go down a long path. There's almost four paths. There's toxic masculine, there's a healthy, there's toxic feminine, and there's a healthy feminine. And so we've all got that. And it's my understanding that my sense of it is it's very difficult to be in that whole divine space because you can't do that by yourself. You need two people together to do that, to really bring it together, to learn and nurture it. But when you do, when you're able to sit there, thank you, Juliana, I'm on the right path. When you sit there, when I'm in my divine masculine, I hold
mm,
space for people. They will tell me stuff that they will feel safe enough to talk, men and women. They will feel safe to be vulnerable.
mm.
And when I'm in my divine masculine, I'm also doing that. I'm holding that space. So that's what I do. And then your divine feminine will be that loving and nurturing support that you've got. The way you hold space, you're listening, you're answering questions, asking questions. You're we're dancing. You and I are dancing, and you're helping that dance, and I'm helping that dance, and that's your divine feminine. And your healthy masculine is where you look after your children. You don't take their nonsense from them. You manage them. You do this, but with respect. And your unhealthy would be that high-ranking CEO, woman CEO, who is dresses like a man, aggressive, assertive. That's the toxic side of a
Yeah.
woman in her male. And unfortunately, that's where it goes. And going back to the feminism, a lot of that is that in that very unhealthy toxic masculinity, because it is one way to walk over men, and it's an effective way. So it's almost they have no choice. So it's really difficult. It's really, really
Really
difficult.
fascinating, Hamish, because I know we've not, and this is not our topic, obviously, but we have dived on patriarchal culture, and we've also dived on narcissism and how patriarchal has played that role. And it's fascinating because and you know my journey, that I didn't really understand a man going through emotional abuse by a woman, right? And like men are also at the receiving end of all that. And this thing where you said that the women where they're trying to be more aggressive, dressing like a man and all that, it's fascinating because in my space I've been speaking about this for over a year, that I want to be soft and it won't take away my strength
No,
or me being strong when needed. And that while I was saying that out loud, I was trying to like reaffirm it inside of me as well. Because again, it goes back to the conditioning and the way we were brought up, that if you're soft, you're weak. So
yeah,
if you're soft, you're weak. And then if you cry, you're weak. And then over time with conditioning and going through narcissistic abuse and all that, I realized that leaning more towards my masculine energy is going to help me survive. I'll feel more safe in the world around me because being soft does not serve me.
yeah,
I'm always a threat, right? And then this thing about a lot of women saying, about feminism and all that. I was like, this feminism race is just so out of proportion because I'm not in competition with a man. Like, I'm not going out and saying, okay, I can dress like a man and I can lift weights like a man or I have physical strength like a man. Now I'm equal to a man. I'm owning the fact that I'm a woman. And in my womanhood, softness thrives, nurturing thrives, love thrives. And that's where I bring in the power, right? And I've been like, this doesn't work at all. But it does because for me, I see it was first the men having more control, being more aggressive decades ago with the patriarchal culture. But now the off balance is the women being more aggressive, the men kind of like, taking a step back and women becoming more aggressive towards men while all of that is fine getting out of the home, working, earning, doing all that. But there is this sense of entitlement that we need to prove a man that we're better than them or we're equal to them. So I think there's a kind of like a rift or a fall between the yin and the yang. Or correct me if I'm wrong.
I think there is, yeah. And it it's okay. It's what it is. It is part of life. We do vacillate between one or the others. We as we bounce along through life as we try and make sense of it. And
Mhm.
I think it's more than okay. It's acceptable. The patriarchy is toxic masculinity. Full stop.
Mm.
It absolutely is. It's incredibly unhealthy. It's incredibly unkind. It's selfish. It's all about greed and take. And
And power.
it is take. It is no. There's no creativity in there. It's take. Um, and the softness, as you said, boys don't cry, men don't cry. They can't be compassionate. They can't be this. They've got to be the alpha male, or you're the simp. The sigma male is completely different, and no one quite understand that because it's not the alpha male and butch and strong and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and there's so much strength in compassion. If a woman gives her husband, her lover, her partner a big hug and says, I see you, he's going to cry because he is not seen enough. He is going to feel appreciated and respected. And that's the magic. And then, when she's prepared to do that, he's prepared to offer. Going back to Juliana again, she says women have to hold that space for men and men hold the space for women. And
But
when you do that,
men, and sorry, I'm cutting you here, but do you think if a woman is giving that to a man, the man, since he's not received it, wouldn't that be a bit uncomfortable in the beginning for him? Like, what's going on here? Like, how
yeah,
is it friend? Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there has to be that gentleness and trust in communication. I mean, within a loving relationship, yes, and it can appear.
Mhm.
There is that fear it'll get used against you. There is that fear, all sorts of things. But when a man is compassionate, when he can hold that compassion for himself, that's where the healing is. But within that relationship, when he's able to express his divine feminine, that compassion, that love, the creativity, the holding space, all that kind of stuff,
Mm.
understanding, that allows the woman to go, hey, I'm seen, I'm trusted.
Mm.
And then when she's trusted, she can give that love back again, because you guys need to feel safe before you love.
Yeah. Yes.
Um, yeah, and that's
Yeah.
fair enough. And so do
Yeah.
blokes. Big secret. This is I'm big secret. Men need to
Big.
feel safe before they can love as well. Um, and men don't feel safe in relationships. And certainly the way the feminism goes and the noise on social media. No, we don't need men. We're fine.
Yeah.
Why the
Yeah.
why the bloody hell should I love you if you're going to treat me like that?
Yeah. I agree. I agree. That's I I don't know if I should be sharing this, but a while back, I was sitting with a bunch of girls and we were talking. It's like, yeah, I need a man, and they're like, why? You're so strong. You just build your life, and I was like, yeah, but I still need a man. And they like from their faces, I could see that they couldn't understand they were perceiving me as somebody really strong and blah blah blah, that narrative, that she's done all that, and why does she need a man? Like, you don't need a man, why would you need a man? And there's always this conversation, and when I sit with women, and obviously these women married and all that, and I'm not judging them, but I'm just saying the feedback that's coming in is, he's a headache. And then I'm like, okay, but we are also part of that headache, you know? We have to own our side of the story and not just dump it on the person in front of us. But it's just, and then where you said about love, it's just all our life, I think we were robbed by giving this fantasy of love, is that you get butterflies and blah blah blah. Nobody ever taught us that emotional safety is so important. We didn't even know that that needs to exist for a thriving. It was a surviving relationship that we learned, because you just need that one emotion, that's love. And I guess everybody over here would agree that just on one emotion, love, you cannot base a, a relationship. It's not. It's gonna collapse. The foundation is not strong.
That that's what it is. You know,
Yeah.
I might sound fatalistic by saying it. That is what it is. That is what the previous generations have passed down to us, and it's our responsibility to share what we now know and pass it on to the next generation. You
Mm.
know, you think back. You've got grandparents who were, you know, around in the 30s and the 40s.
Mm.
What they went through was pretty harrowing.
Yeah.
In your country, it was desperate. The partition all around that was just awful. World
Yeah.
War II, just awful. We've both got families, everybody's got families who's lived through that generation. And then the 40s and 50s and 60s, different stuff,
Yeah.
their own versions of terror. And then the 70s and 80s and 90s. Every generation goes through stuff.
Yeah.
And every generation has to change. You know,
Yeah.
you've drawn a line in the sand and said there is no way that's ever going to happen in my relationship. I'm never going to allow my children to suffer the way I did, and that's not a reflection on your parents. That is a reflection on you looking forwards.
Mm.
You know, I would never, if I had kids, I'd have brought them up very differently to how I was.
Mm.
And I know my dad and my mum brought me and my siblings up differently to how they were brought up. So every
Yeah.
generation has this capacity to share this new knowledge that we are finding, experiencing forwards. And that's where it's beautiful. You know, your kids are going to be so different to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your grandchildren are going to be completely different again, and they'll have their own headaches to deal with. You know, they'll
Yeah.
have technology that's completely different to what we've got, etc.
Mm.
But that's just part of that process.
Mm.
And it's always going to be, we're always going to mess up our kids because they're growing up in a different era we did, and we're teaching them what we knew, and that's just life.
Yeah.
So that's what it's going to be. So it
Yeah.
has to be with that awareness that we do the best we can and teach them that please question everything I've taught you. And
Yeah.
that's damning on my ego. Yeah, you know, do it my way. But
Yeah.
if we teach them, question everything I said because
Yeah.
it was right for me. It's not right for you necessarily. A lot of what my parents taught me was brilliant. A lot of it's not is out of date.
Yeah.
Um, But when we question those stories, you know, is it really true? Should children be seen and not heard? Should I always put everybody else first and myself last? No chance. Absolutely not. I can't do, if I'm depleted, I can't even look after myself, let alone other people. I mean, bloody Victorians, what a stupid idea. But that was their idea then, and they thought it was noble and pious and religious and God knows what. You know, it's just, and that's fine.
Sacrifice yourself. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
It absolutely was. And that's fine for then. And for now, it's different. And, you know, your kids will look back at what you told them and say, Mum, that was awful. You know,
Yeah.
there's no way I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know better.
Yeah.
Um, and, you
That-
know, when I look back at my stories, I just think, you know, my dad died just over 6 weeks ago and we buried him 2 weeks ago. And part of that process has been, this was my dad, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. My brother says, no, he's this, and this. His school friends, this. So I realised that what I thought of my dad was from my perspective, through my lenses, through my fears, through my stuff, and how I had to cope with him not being present, him this, him that. And I had to look at every single story I have about him. Oh, my dad was never around. He wasn't there. He didn't love me. He did love me. He wasn't there because he was trying to make a house. He wasn't there because of this. At 7 years old, it didn't matter. He wasn't there. I felt rejected. I've had to
Yeah.
look at all those stories and go, is that true? No. Is that true? No. Is that true? No. My identity was based on my dad not being present and this and that. So I've had to look at my identity, this 53 years old, and gone, shit, my identity is based on stuff that is not true.
Mm.
And then not beat myself up for it,
Yeah.
and realize that now I can change that story. Now I remember, because we remember everything. Our bodies are designed to remember. I've just filtered out. So I have to sort of go back and, what was that? Was that actually what really happened? Look at it without that lens of ego and fear and things like that. And I see a dad who was loving and kind and bitterly concerned that he didn't get it right. Did I do that right? Did I do that? I don't know. I can feel his anguish. Wow. Yeah. Hang on. Thank you. I can feel his anguish and his concern and consternation. And did I do that right? Did I do that right? And then by the time my second brother turned up, fuck, I didn't do it right. So he got it differently. And of course, my sister got it differently. But that's growing up. So I've had to look back at who my father was rather than how I remember him.
Mm.
That is humbling, because I said, I've had to re-find another identity. And that's the process of healing yourself. It's looking back at those old stories. Are they true?
Mm.
Are those patterns true? Do I need to repeat the same thing, trying to make it differently? And it's really hard,
Yeah.
but it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Yeah. And he was doing his best. His father was doing his best. And they were both the same. And I suspect your parents and everybody's parents are going like, this thing appeared 2 days ago. I know I put it there to feed it, but what the hell do I do now? It's crying. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
It's 7 years old. What do I do? It's 10 years old. It's going to big school. It's doing this. What do I do? Nobody tells you. If you've got grandparents, they help, but their ideas are 60 years old. It's no wonder we're all messed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when we realise that, it's what it is. It's no more complicated than that. It's just what it is. And so be aware, be a bit more kind, be a bit more gentle. Don't judge somebody just because you're having a bad day. They're probably having a bad day as well. And if your parents hit you and beat you and did unmentionable things, that was the best they could. What did you learn from it? You learned to survive.
Mm.
And now you can learn to thrive. And that's what it's all about. We're learning to thrive.
Hamish, first of all, I'm really sorry for your father. Really sorry for your loss. And I know we did speak about this, and me myself, that when you're hurt and when you're, operating from a trauma response, or I don't know, when you're in a lot of emotional pain and distress, you kind of like, I think your judgment gets clouded, and then you just focus on one part of the narrative. And I remember, guilty as I am, but many years ago I made this post, and it was me and my whole family, and then under that I've written this whole story about I was not loved, I was not seen by my parents, and blah 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 and blah blah, right? And that was my truth in that moment. I'm not saying that it wasn't, right? And I remember my sister read that post, and she called me, and she's like, "You're just so unfair. You got so much love, you know." And then this other person called me from the family, and this other person. And I just sat in that moment. And I know at that moment I felt so unvalidated, because I knew that what I had written on my post was coming from my heart. And that was my truth.
Mm.
But later on, like you said, when you heal and you hold that self compassion, and I'm a mom myself, and I know how much I messed up my children, was when I started to see how I had messed up my children, but it wasn't intentional. I was doing my best, and I didn't know at that time. And I thought this was my best. It started to make sense that what my parents were doing for me was their best. And that's when the narrative changed, the bitterness changed, and the judgment, the clouded judgment kind of like played off. And like, yeah, there were times I felt I wasn't loved, and I felt very lonely and lost. But there were moments where they deeply loved me, and they gave me love. I wanted love in this way, but they were giving me love in this way. So it wasn't that they weren't giving me love, but I was a kid and I couldn't tell them this is not how I want to receive love. I wanted I want to receive love by you giving me time, and like you said, the dad being more present and stuff like that. But he was doing his best. My mom was doing her best. And then kind of like saying, my sister was right. But I was not able to see that part, because I was so hurt in that moment, that so many years I carried that grudge, that this is the only story. And I kept on feeding that story all my life, that this is the only narrative, that this is what my parents gave me. Obviously now I'm at a different end. And for me, one thing that I've told that a lot to my daughter, not my son. So my daughter is 15, my son's going to be 9, is that, sweetheart, I'm going to mess up so many times while I'm parenting you. But there is one thing I want you to do for me. And that is, every time you think that this was wrong for you, you need to come and tell me. Because if you don't, I'm going to believe that my dad or my mom taught me, and I'm doing this, I'm doing right by you. So if you don't come and check me, and that too respectfully, very respectfully, I will think I'm right.
Mm.
So we've kind of come to that point where she does it, and she says, I felt hurt. I felt unseen when you did that in front of the family. And I was like, okay. And then, that inner dialogue, but I was trying to protect her. And why did I do that? Oh, because my dad was doing that. Okay. And now she's also not feeling the way I used to feel. So it's kind of like, I don't know how well it's going, but I think that we kind of like bridging that gap, because I'm giving her the liberty to see that a parent can mess up, and it's okay, we're human. And then giving her that respect that if you feel this is off, you come and address it, but make sure it's done in a respectful way.
Wow.
Yeah. Don't know how
Wow.
well that is, but getting there, Hamish.
You're, you're doing the best you can. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Quick segue for everyone listening in the comments. Do you think you're doing the best that you can? That is such a profound question. Do you think that you're doing the best that you can?
Have an open conversation with children is the most beautiful gift to the world. Yeah, I agree. And Hamish, I'll answer that question. Yes, I completely and totally think I'm doing the best I
Mm.
am. And I'm not even looking at yesterday and like saying like, no, I didn't do any good. Oh, I needed to do better. I am doing the best I can. And I'm so proud of myself.
Brilliant. And
Yes.
I think that last thing that you said, you're proud of yourself. You're acknowledging it, and that's
Yeah.
healthy. That is
Yeah.
really, really healthy. And for all the blokes listening there, acknowledge how well you're doing, because we don't
Yeah.
give ourselves any credit. We do something well, we move on to the next one. Oh, that wasn't too bad. No, you're awesome. And that's part of this beginning to thrive, is acknowledging how well you're doing, even if you think you're not doing that well. You are doing the best that you can. So it comes back to that compassion, that self-compassion. And as you said earlier, it's not softness as in being walked over softness. It's
Yeah.
softness as in grounded, as in, if you a football will roll in the wind, but if a flat football won't, because it's softer, it's sitting on the ground, it's like that, it's grounded. So
Yeah,
that softness allows you to be grounded and pliable in the way that you can feel, and you can sort of ride the anguish and noise and things like that. But it's also very powerful, and it's also, for us blokes, is tapping into our feminine energy, and it's nurturing and it's healthy, and it's something that most men, and myself absolutely included, we're not doing that. We're just staying in that masculine, and that is rigid. That is,
outdated.
yes, it's utterly, it ultimately it's unhealthy. It's not yin and yang. It's half of it, or maybe a tiny bit more or a bit less. You're just not in balance. You're not in harmony. You're
And I
not
think it
in
doesn't
that
even
space
serve
of,
you.
it doesn't serve you. No, you're not in that potential to do more than survive. You're not able to thrive if you are not able to look at that other side of your capacity to be human.
Mm. Hamish, that was intense. But before we kind of go towards the end of this, uh, I just, my part of the world, right? And we've had tons of conversations about how men are wired here and how heavy influence of patriarchal culture there is, and where that we're still way behind because we're still living in a society where men are told man up, don't cry, don't show emotion, suppress yourself, be the provider, and all that outdated stuff. And the wiring still is very strong and rigid, and there's no flexibility, there is no support system here. You don't have those groups of men where you can sit, because if you went and you spoke in those groups, you're shamed, you're not a man enough. So then now the men are more suppressed. uh what would you say to these men in my society? Like, where do they go? What do they do?
I think there's a group in the UK called Andy's Man Group, and that is a space for men, held by men, for men to share. Um, and it needs something like that set up where people will come and talk with each other and say, hey, I'm not feeling really good today, or I'm feeling crap, or this has happened, or that's happened.
Right.
It requires two people to be vulnerable, to dare to be vulnerable, and then in that space, that's where the magic will happen. But it's one has to take a risk.
Yeah.
And you've got, yes, people might shame you. I mean, this is where, if you start doing the work on yourself, you can appreciate if someone's shaming you, it's just a reflection of
Of that.
themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
It's the
it's
whole
it
culture here shaming you, so it kind of gets really hard. Trust me.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is hard, and
yeah.
there's no simple answer. The answer is to find someone and talk to, create a group. There will be groups of people doing this privately, online, things like that. Um, there are international groups. Go international. We've all got
Do
the
you think,
internet.
do you think that even if I'm just saying it out loud, I don't know
Mm.
honestly, but let's say there's somebody out here listening and he's like, okay, even if I go in these international groups and I learn all these things, being vulnerable and opening up, but when I come back in the real world, it's the same struggle. So how
Mm.
do I draw the balance for myself?
Well, in that looking after yourself and building your own self-confidence and self-esteem and thriving,
Uh-huh.
stuff will get thrown at you, but it will miss. It won't hurt so much. You will realize that it's not really about you. It's about them and their fears and insecurities, and the fact that there might be some respect, and it will be hard. It is hard, but it's also, you take
Empowering,
it
I
back.
think.
It's the hero's journey. It is nothing more complicated than the hero's journey, where person has to change, person does, and then they come back, they come home, and they get ostracized because they're different, because they've grown up, they're educated.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, and so you find people who will be like-minded, and they
Yeah.
are out there. You talk, do a podcast, come on your podcast, do that kind of thing. Find a platform, and yes, you'll get stuff thrown at you, but you might not. You might get one or two people going, "Hey, this is brilliant," and it doesn't take much. An earthquake, a tiny little tremor, and everything falls down. It
Yeah.
doesn't take much for things to start changing. Yes, it might take a time. It will take a time. I mean, this country, we're very backwards when it comes to men respecting themselves and respecting women and things like that. It's still a very patriarchal, toxic, masculine society. Um, but there are more and more people talking and sharing and daring to be vulnerable, and it is scary. Full stop. It is.
I mean, there's always risk. Not being vulnerable, that you're
Yeah.
not living your authentic life.
Mm.
Being vulnerable, being authentic, but I mean, you have to find your balance, I guess. Yeah, that does make sense. Hamish, thank you so much for tonight. I feel a lot too heavy. I think I've taken in a lot, but I've learned a lot. And I hope that in this space, we were able to provide people with hope and a place where they can go and reflect and think how they can thrive for themselves. We will wrap it up, but yes, Hamish, your last words to everyone before we say bye bye.
Be kind to yourself. Thriving does require effort. It does require looking after yourself. It does require putting yourself first. It does require taking time for yourself. But in that moment, you're actually being truthful to yourself. You're putting yourself first. And what do I really want? I want to be loved. I want to do this. I don't tolerate that. You're beginning to, you get stronger. You
Yeah.
get stronger. You're able to cope with stuff, and you're actually starting to do your bliss, what is really important.
Mm.
So dare to thrive, because it's you feel alive. It's basically about coming alive. So yeah, dare to thrive.
Dare to thrive. I like that.
Mm.
I like that. Hamish, are you offering any courses at this time? Is there any way people can connect with you? Are there any programs out there people need to know about?
There's a lot of things happening at the moment. I'm actually on the radio in the UK next week, so there's going to be some stuff out there very, very soon. But yeah, if people want to get hold of me, find me on Instagram, find me on TikTok, find me on Facebook, and go from there. I do have a challenge coming out in beginning of August,
Okay.
and I think that's going to be quite interesting, because it's looking at procrastination and
Ooh.
all these things, people pleasing and hypervigilance, and just basically it's looking into more detail what we've talked about, and how and why they are not evil and bad and naughty and nasty. They're just, they need updating. I
Yeah.
think that's what it is. And then with awareness and things like that, we can start to look at how you can change, because it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you, Hamish. I'm sending you so much love. Thank you for tonight, and we shall bring you back again pretty soon.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed chatting and listening to you. Thanks so much.
I'm glad. Well, take care, everybody. See you next Saturday. Till then, bye bye.